Hello and welcome to the Strong Mama Moves and Self-Care Snacks podcast. Just a quick note before heading into this podcast, there is a trigger warning. There will be talk of things like suicidal ideation and eating disorders and mental and emotional abuse. So if any of these topics affect you, you may not want to listen. And if you do need support at this time, please contact your relevant healthcare professional and get the support that you deserve. If you like the podcast, you can subscribe and make sure that you never miss an upcoming episode. Let's get started. Hello. So welcome to the Strong Mama Moves and Self-Care Snacks podcast. So today, essentially it's the first one. I know I did a little one last week, but this is going to be where I'm going to introduce who I am, what Strong Mama Moves and the Self-Care Snacks podcast is all about, and kind of give you an idea why what I'm going to be sharing is important to me, but why I'm so passionate about sharing what I do. So I'm Amanda, as many of you will already know from following my social media accounts, and Strong Mama Moves has been a part of my life since I had my little girl, Ruby. So officially, officially, I guess it's not even started, but when I first kind of came up with the name, it was actually September 2018 when Ruby was 6 months old. 7 months old when I set up mum and baby exercise classes. So what Strong Mama Moves has kind of changed over time, and the reason why I kind of bring that up is the fact that naturally when you think Strong Mama Moves, you're going to go to, oh, it must be for mums, just mums, or just mums and babies, whereas you'll actually find about half of my clients are actually men. So I work with mainly parents, but the whole concept of Strong Mama Moves is essentially the moves that I have taken since being a mum to heal and recover from complex post-traumatic stress disorder and things like emotional and mental and financial abuse. And it encompasses so many different things. It encompasses my 12 years in the fitness industry, where at one point I was actually the national ambassador for Fitness First UK. So I got to do cool things like not only work with my clients to help them to achieve their goals, but also to contribute to magazines such as Women's Fitness, InStyle Online, the Daily Mail. What else did I do? Fit and Well magazine. I did quite a few different ones, but I also did things like helping them develop their app, and as well writing the pre-race prep part of the Royal Parks half marathon coaching course, which I then went on to deliver, but also to run the race itself. And on the day of the race, I got to do the cool warm-up stage bit, and I was the only one on the warm-up team that was actually running the half marathon after it as well. So that was really cool because it meant that I got to run the half marathon, but then come back to the welcome tent, and people that had attended the course would come back and tell me how well they did. So I've been able to do some really cool things in my fitness career, but fitness for me has been not only a passion, but I've used it as my original therapy. So before I even got counseling, now I lost both of my parents to alcohol addiction. So I lost my dad when I was 15 years old. And it was one of those things where the memory that sticks with me is that my mum, when the doctor had asked us about turning off the life support because dad had like a 10% chance of living, And if he did live, he would, he would be stuck on the ventilator. The doctor turned around and asked us, what we wanted to do, and Mum looked at me for the answer. Now that's a lot for a 15-year-old to carry, and my attendance at school went way down the year after that. And I remember going into the guidance teacher's office, and she was like, right, you're going to have to apply for jobs because you're not going to get into university. I know it's been hard, what with your dad dying and all, Amanda, but let's face it, it's been a year now. Crickets. And this is the thing, these are the things that kind of can end up sticking with us, and for me, it definitely changed the course of how I not only dealt with things, but how I chose to move forward and forge my path. And in some ways it was good, in some ways it was bad. It was very bad. And those were really tough parts of my life. But what I've been able to do in the last 3 years while raising Ruby alone, so I had Ruby from a single pregnancy into single motherhood. I had made a deal with myself that I was going to heal all my wounds so that I could give Ruby a chance to um, live without carrying my trauma. Basically, I knew I had that choice. I could get better, or I could get bitter, if you like. But I decided that I wanted to move forwards. But that meant that things in the past, like the guidance teacher, what she had said to me, which had been part of what fueled a life of perfectionism and trying to overachieve and work to burn out. It's meant having to unpick that. It's meant having to unpick that in a world where perfectionism and hustle and overachieving are things that are celebrated in society, despite the fact that they are normally mechanisms to not deal with pain. And what happens then, or what happened in my case, was perfectionism. Not only was I burnt out, so it was jeopardizing my health, but it meant that I had unhealthy coping mechanisms. So I would work really hard, work 60, 70 hour work weeks, and then at the weekend I would go home and I would get really drunk, or I would go out and get really drunk to like black out, and then that would be the only way that I would take rest. I felt so guilty taking rest that I would never let myself stop. And the only way that I would stop was if I had a hangover. Now, that's not very healthy. That's a double life that I was leading for like 10 years of my life, where to society, I was looking really successful. I was chasing my dreams. Any goal that I set, I would hit. Right, I want a six pack. I'm not going to have, I'm not going to let myself have kids until I have a six pack. I went and got a six pack, and then I was like, I'm not happy. That wasn't it. And then hit like a major depression, or I'm going to earn X amount this year. I'd hit it, and then be like, wait, I'm not happy. That's not it. So it meant I was driving constantly for these goals, these huge goals, impressive, really cool ones that I'm massively proud of. However, it was killing me. It was torching my health because I was never resting. I was always working on burnout and too much caffeine, and eating well, but also not always eating so well. I had a lot of process addictions. So an example of a process addiction was I had disordered eating for a very long time. And this was all ways of me trying to soothe the pain of the loss of my dad, which I didn't understand, and the difficult family relationships that I had. I never felt like I had a sense of belonging. I never felt like genuine friendships were for me. I saw people that would have really close friendships with people and they would be doing lots of things. And I would be working really hard through the week and, looking really, bouncing around the place, teaching my classes, and loving my job, enjoying my job, but going home alone and spending the weekends alone and not quite understanding why, just thinking that there must be something fundamentally wrong with me. And it was only when I came to pregnancy that I realized, wait, there are things I can change here. There must be things I can change. There must be a way that I can have a better relationship with myself. The only reason I'd started looking after myself was because I had become pregnant. So when the year before I got pregnant, I'd lost my mom. I'm going to say about January, February, March, April, May. So 16 months. 16 months before I became pregnant, I'd lost my mom. And I would say that that was probably one of the most dangerous years of my life. It was where I was really not able to cope with the loss of my mom. I'd lost my mom also to alcohol addiction. And in some senses, it was quite sudden, even though I kind of knew it was coming. At the time, I'd had a boyfriend. I'd had a boyfriend who ghosted me when my mom died. And then when I went back to London, because I wouldn't move in with him, he cheated on me and left me for another girl 10 days after my mom's funeral. Really, really nice guy. This was the kind of relationships that I had before having Ruby. So how I coped with that pain was, again, it was the working really relentlessly hard, rebuilding the business that I had had to set down when I left London to go deal with everything surrounding my mum being in hospital and then losing her life. I returned to London and started essentially from scratch again. And I did it. I built up from the beginning. To return to London, I actually ended up having to return on a credit card and living off of the credit card and then paying off of what I was getting paid until it got to the point where, I was living free again. And that would horrify some people. But for me, it was kind of like, right, I've got an option. I can stay where I am and I can stay in Aberdeen, where I know that I am going to probably not cope at all with this. Or I can go back to London with what I've got and do what I can. And I did, and I worked really hard and I was very proud of it. I ended up changing gyms and going to, like, probably my favorite gym to have worked at would have been Gym Box. And I ended up earning more in that year than I had ever earned in my career. I'd done exceptionally well, but I was in so much pain. Again, living that double life, going out and getting into really dangerous situations at the weekend because I would go and get really drunk. And I remember at one point I was out and my friend had already gone home and I'd stayed out and I'd been dropped off home and I had no idea how I'd got there. And I didn't really know what to do at that point. Again, at work, I was, the busiest female PT at the time in Gym Box because I'd built up really quickly. And then, yeah, sometimes I don't know what to say then. I was in so much pain. And anytime that I did reach out for support, I'd be told that I was fine because I was working, because I was doing this. And this is the curse of the high functioning person that has depression, trauma, anxiety, is we're not seen because we're able to do things that a lot of people can't do with depression or anxiety. So it means that the perception is that you're fine, just suck it up and get on with it. What I didn't realize until I hit therapy years later, it would be probably a year into therapy after having Ruby, that I didn't realize I was so suicidal then. But I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to live. I just wanted the pain to end. But I was too scared. I didn't want to do it myself. So I would put myself in really high risk situations, hoping that someone else would take the decision away from me. And that's horrifying. It's really heartbreaking to think back to that. That was where I was at. And yeah, I mean, it's really heavy stuff. And so when it came round to me becoming pregnant with Ruby, I had to look after myself all of a sudden. All of these unhealthy coping mechanisms had to go. I couldn't drink if I was going to be having a baby. I couldn't overwork, apart from the fact that it would be unhealthy for my pregnancy. Physically couldn't. Anyone that's been through first trimester in pregnancy knows that the whole thing is feeling a bit rubbish and feeling so tired that you could barely do a thing. I was going and teaching clients and then going home for a nap, and kind of that would be my whole days. But I came to realize very quickly that it wasn't enough just to look after myself for the sake of Ruby. I knew that in order to be a good parent, I was going to have to start looking after myself for me. Because at the end of the day, as people and small children don't build who they are or respond to what they're told, but what they observe and what they copy and develop from that. So it would be all too easy for me to be like, look after yourself, you're amazing, but then to treat myself very differently. And what was really, really hard about pregnancy was the fact that I had to not only kind of get ready. I had no idea how I was going to do it on my own, or how I was going to do it. I knew it was going to be hard, but also that idea that, wow, like I wish I'd done my healing stuff before this, because this is going to be tough. So I'd be hit with the pregnancy hormones, which meant that alongside not having my unhealthy coping mechanisms, all of a sudden, I had to deal with this grief. It just hit me. It was, I kind of liken it, how I liken it is me running. I'd spent my life running. So I'm running. Then I got pregnant. It was like stopping and turning in and facing the wind, and it just hitting you, but like hurricane level, and knocking you to the floor. It was relentless because I couldn't escape it. I didn't have the same ways of escapism, but it showed me what my strength was. I couldn't even have caffeine. I used to have so much caffeine. And I probably shouldn't have even had decaf, but I was like, I've got to do something here. So I switched to decaf. So it meant that, by the time I did have Ruby, I was like, right, okay, I've got through pregnancy where I was so tired and I've had to deal with the emotions, and it was character building, resilience building. What I didn't realize was I'd also moved from London. I decided that because when I was pregnant, the London Bridge attack happened, Grenfell happened, and the night after Grenfell, someone had tried to set fire to my building. And I woke up and it was like right beside my bedroom as well. It was quite scary. I was like, no, The riots were happening. All these kind of things were going on. I was like, I need to go home where it's going to be safer for Ruby. And I might have, I'm going to have people around to support me. What I didn't realize was that when I got back home, that I wouldn't have that. And when I did have it, it was conditional and used to essentially emotionally abuse me. So the first year in particular of having Ruby was incredibly tough. But through all this, because I'd built businesses in the face of adversity, my entire life, I was like, I can absolutely do this. I didn't know how hard it was going to be. Take you full circle round. So Strong Mama Moves was actually born of knowing the power of exercise. I'd started exercising properly. I mean, I did ballet when I was a kid, between the ages of 4 and 14, 4 and 14, I think it was, 4 and 15. Between the ages of 4 and 15, I was always walking, always climbing trees and stuff like that. But formal exercise, I didn't start until I was at uni, and I'd gained weight after being so skinny all my life, to the point that when I was at school, I used to get teased for it, and the health education videos that they used to put on at school, where they'd be like, oh, there'd be ones on anorexia, and they used to be like, ha ha ha, look, there's Amanda in the video, which was really, really hurtful and created naturally a complex. I'd gained a lot of weight when I was at uni from drinking, smoking, eating terribly. That was what I did. I was a fashion student and I was living awfully. But then I got ready for a holiday and I went the complete opposite way, went way too hard with my fitness. That's a whole other story that'll take me ages to go through that one. I'll do it in a separate podcast. But I started running, and running became a way for me to process the pain of grief and loss, that I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what to deal with it. I knew that, I was hurting, but I didn't know what to do with that energy, because anytime that I don't remember being able to talk to anyone about it or gaining support from it. It's like there's a whole blank to that part of my life where I can't really remember. But so running for me was that escape. So when I realized how good that felt and how freeing and the rush of endorphins felt, considering I felt in so much emotional pain, I immediately wanted to scream it from the rooftops and tell everybody. And that's kind of how my fitness career was born, because I graduated from fashion design and then went on to retrain immediately in the fitness profession. The rest is history. So for a long time, I'd been using it as therapy, and I knew that in postpartum, mental health issues are so tough and affect so many women, irrespective of if they'd had mental health battles before. So while I dropped to sleeping 2 hours a night, most nights, for 7 months in postpartum depression, because I was being told that I was faking it and I was doing it for attention and doing it to make them look bad. And because I'd moved from London to Aberdeen, I completely slipped through the net in the health system, despite having an extensive history with trauma and mental health. So I had to take things into my own hands. It was to the point where I went to the doctors, and I went to the doctors upwards of 20 times. I kept on returning, even though I felt I barely had enough strength to survive, because I knew I needed help, and I knew that they could give me the help that they weren't offering me. So I kept going back. And at one point, one doctor backed me out of the doctor's office. So even despite this time where I wasn't sleeping very well, I knew that I could take the expertise that I had in nutrition and my understanding of how you can use nutrition to support your immunity and support your energy. So that was my goal, was to strengthen myself to get through this time, rather than to lose the weight. And because I did eat that way anyway, I lost the 22 kilos that I put on because I was supporting my body to be able to keep going instead of punishing it. But I also used moving. I knew that exercise could help boost you, gave you that hit of energy that you might not otherwise have if you didn't do it, particularly in low mood and depression. A lot of that for me was mental fatigue, and mental fatigue creates that feeling of physical fatigue, and sometimes the way to break out of it is to move. So I would walk every day with the pram, but I also started going to the gym. So by the time September came around, I had built this business, and it was for women to come to these mum and baby exercise classes that were pre and postnatal friendly classes, so designed to break you back into exercise instead of some of the extreme things that were available out there. And I wanted to create a safe space where they could do the class, but if they needed to stop and feed, they could stop and feed. Sometimes they wouldn't be able to do the whole class. Sometimes they would only get to do a bit, but just having the support of other moms in exactly the same place, making friends, being able to talk. We had nights out and things like that. I even had a couple of PT clients from it. And all the while, when I built that, I was sleeping 2 hours a night and I was struggling hard. But I knew the power that I had to be able to create something that could support and help other mums. And that's how it was originally born. And though those classes stopped, the Strong Mama Moves was nominated for a local award and made finalist as Best New Business Set Up in 2018, which I thought was amazing considering the circumstances I set it up in, and that I'd only been in Aberdeen for, little over a year at that point, and not even a year when I'd set up the company. But yeah, even though the classes stopped, I've been reluctant to let go of the name because I've made so many different strong mama moves since then, taking Ruby across the world. So I'd been told when I was pregnant that, oh, you're never going to be able to do traveling, you're not going to be able to do this. Are you sure you want to go through with your pregnancy? And I thought, how awful, people think that they can say something like that to you anyway. But I was like, watch me. And I knew that you only get the their seat free until they're 2 years old. So Ruby and I traveled from Aberdeen to London to Bali to Sydney, and then back to Bali, and then back to London, back home, right before Ruby turned 2. So that was a process of, taking goals and really, really going for it. So I was really, really proud of that too. But yeah, I'm also doing my degree now in social psychology because I was able to help my own mental health and start my own healing where the doctors at the time weren't helping me. I developed such an amazing knowledge of psychology and human behavior that I ended up going and starting my degree in social psychology. So where Strong Mama Moves is going now is I'm going to be taking the things that I've learned and the experiences that I've had and trying to pull lessons out of them so that I can bring inspiration to people so they can make their own moves and realize that when you are battling with any sort of mental health struggle, or I'm trying to think of good words that aren't so negative, but when you're finding that things are tough, that you can really dig deep and find that power within yourself to do anything that you want and create the reality that you really desire. But it does take digging into some of the tougher lessons. So that's what I'm wanting to bring here by bringing my own personal lessons, but also by bringing to you many other amazing human beings who have done the exact same. So it's going to be really exciting. And I know I dipped here and there and everywhere. I sometimes do that with stories. It's just the way my brain goes. But hopefully that gives you like a little bit of a brief idea of some of the things that have made me who I am, and to kind of remind people that, nobody's perfect. My lessons and my achievements have come through massive detours, parts of my life where, I haven't necessarily felt proud of myself, but haven't known what else to do. And the knowledge that you can always choose again. So I hope you've enjoyed this introductory podcast, and I will catch you on the next one.